So it seems like there's quite a bit of interest in Jack Gibbens' injury and what it means for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, it's certainly not good news for the Titans, especially considering how they've been playing this.
Could you fill us in on exactly what happened?
Well, during that Vikings game, Gibbens went down with a pretty serious lower leg injury.
How serious are we talking?
Serious enough that he needs surgery. He's out for the rest of the season.
Wow.
They're saying it'll be a 4-month recovery period, give or take.
So he's out for quite a while then. That's a big loss for them.
It is.
Could you remind us about Gibbens' role on the team and what makes him such a valuable asset to their defense?
Even though the Titans are sitting at a 2-8 record, Gibbens has really been a standout performer. He's their 4th leading tackler, which tells you something.
Right. It's not like he's been buried on the depth chart.
Exactly. And what makes this loss particularly tough is his impact against the run.
In what way?
He's been really good at disrupting plays in the backfield, and that's not an easy thing to replace.
No, it's not. And they've already had some struggles at the linebacker position, haven't they?
They have.
Kenneth Murray hasn't quite lived up to expectations, and then they traded Ernest Jones IV mid-season. So where does this leave them?
It's a tough spot, to be honest. Their options are pretty limited at this.
What do you see as their most likely course of action?
Well, they're going to need Murray to step up his game significantly. He's been inconsistent so far. They might also have to look into free agency or even consider another trade.
This is their 2nd straight loss now, and they've lost 5 of their last 6. This injury just adds to their woes.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
It really seems like they're going to need to prioritize the linebacker position in the upcoming draft.
Absolutely. They need a solution for the short term, but they also need to think about the long-term health of them.
And speaking of the long term, there's been a lot of talk about Will Levis and his performance at quarterback.
Yeah, he's had a bit of an up-and-down season.
How do you think this injury, combined with the team's overall struggles, might affect their evaluation of Levis and their plans for the quarterback position going forward?
Well, the Titans are in a tough spot with the quarterback situation. The upcoming draft class isn't exactly loaded with talent at that position, so their options for replacing Levis are limited. This injury, on top of everything else, might force them to take a hard look at Levis and really decide if they think he can develop into their starting quarterback.
Or if they need to look elsewhere, even with a weak draft class.
Exactly. It's a tough decision for them. It really makes you realize how important depth is. You just never know when you're going to lose a key player. And having solid backups can make all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. It also puts a spotlight on those tough decisions teams have to make, balancing those immediate needs with the long-term vision. They need a solution at linebacker, but they've also got the draft coming up, and they need to think about the future of their defense as a whole.
Exactly. And, this injury could even force them to speed up their rebuilding plans, especially if they decide to target a linebacker early in the draft. It's a question of whether they think they can compete next year or if they need to take a more long-term approach.
Right. And then you've got the uncertainty surrounding Will Levis. They're in a tough spot, trying to figure out their quarterback situation while also needing to shore up the defense. Do you think a trade for a veteran quarterback could be on the table, even if it means giving up some draft capital?
It's definitely a possibility, but it really depends on how they view Levis and what options are even available. Bringing in a veteran would be a short-term fix, most likely, so they'd have to weigh that against the potential of developing a quarterback, whether it's Levis or someone they draft.
Speaking of the draft, what's your take on this year's linebacker class? Are there any prospects who stand out as potential fits for the Titans?
There are a few intriguing names out there, guys who could potentially thrive in the Titans. But the draft is always a gamble, There's no guarantee that a rookie can step in and fill Gibbons' shoes right away.
That's true. This whole situation really highlights the complexity of the NFL, dealing with injuries, a losing streak, all those challenges.
Absolutely. The Titans are at a crossroads, and the decisions they make over the next few months will have a big impact on them.
It seems like their approach to the draft will be crucial. They need to find that balance between addressing the immediate needs and building for the future.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how they handle this. Their moves will tell us a lot about their confident Levis and their overall vision for the team.
So for our listeners who are trying to wrap their heads around all of this, what would you say are the key takeaways from this injury?
Well, I think it just goes to show you that you can never predict what's going to happen in the NFL. And that depth at every position is absolutely.
It also shows how one injury can have a ripple effect, impacting not just the game plan for the next week, but also the long-term strategic decisions.
And it underscores the difficult choices teams face, trying to balance those immediate needs with the long-term goals, especially when you're in the middle of a tough season.
So taking all of that into account, the Titans' struggles this season, the depleted linebacker position, the uncertainty at quarterback, how do you think this injury will ultimately shape their decisions moving forward?
It's hard to say for certain, but I think it could push them towards a more aggressive, prioritizing the draft, maybe even exploring some trades to bring in key players.
It'll be interesting to see how they respond to this setback and what moves they make in the offseason.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's tough being a Titans fan right now.
It really is. They're dealing with a lot. Injury, the losing streak, the questions at quarterback, it all adds up.
Absolutely. As they try to figure out what to do next, what are some of the big things they need to consider?
Well, the first thing is to be realistic about their chances. Can they turn things around quickly? Or do they need to commit to a longer rebuild?
And a lot of that hinges on Will Levis, doesn't it? If they believe in him, if they think he can be the guy, then maybe they build around him.
Right.
But if they have doubts, then they might have to look elsewhere.
Exactly. And that decision on Levis will affect how they approach the draft, too. If they're sticking with him, they might focus on other needs, like that linebacker spot. But if they're searching for a new quarterback, they might be tempted to reach for someone in this draft class, which might not be the best long-term strategy.
So it's a balancing act for them. They need to address the immediate problem, but also keep the bigger picture in mind.
Definitely. And whether they succeed or not, it'll come down to making tough choices and having a clear plan.
So for our listeners who are trying to understand all this, what's the most important thing to remember?
The NFL is a league of change. Injuries happen, rosters change, teams rise and fall. The Titans are at a turning, and how they handle this will shape their future.
Well said.